When we first laid our eyes on the TVS Raider a few years back, I remember saying it over-delivered. It punched way above its weight in the 125cc premium commuter space. And I wasn't alone, because that year it snatched the coveted Indian Motorcycle of the Year award. And in its own segment at the market, it became a bit of a sales superhero. And speaking of hero, not the one to be sitting silently in one corner, they're throwing in the hat in the ring with the new Xtreme 125R. It's like David is lining up another stone for the Goliath in the Raider. The Xtreme is gunning for glory alongside Hero's own Glamour X-Tech, ready to tempt Raider fans. So what happens when these two go head-to-head? Which one will end up as the king of the urban jungle? Let's roll up our sleeves and dive right in. The TVS Raider might not be the prettiest in its segment, but it's got a sort of a bumblebee-esque headlight which makes it stand out like a sore thumb, in a good way. It's like they've tried to cram in the charm of a 3-pot headlight in this LED unit. Spotting this bike from afar isn't a challenge, and with its array of 5 color choices, it's got a wardrobe that's ready for any occasion. The Raider's got the bones of a commuter bike, but with the beefy belly pan, the tank shrouds, the split seat, and the nippy tail, it is dressed in its Sunday best, sporty with a hint of rebellion. Now the Xtreme, as the name cheekily hints, takes the design to, well, the extreme. It's like they looked at the Ducati Street Fighter and said, yeah, let's have some of that. But those pointy lines, those sharp tank shrouds, the stubby tail section, all of it is quite good looking. These are head turners in my opinion. In fact, the 125R looks so good, it makes the Xtreme 160R look a bit tame in comparison. The belly pan is a bit on the meh side, but those protruding headlights, they are like the eyes of a predator, making the Raider look a tad less adventurous in comparison. Decked out with LED lights all around and some snazzy graphics, the Xtreme does have a bit of a premium swagger. But it only comes in 3 color options as of now. And once you swing your leg over, the low-end switchgear and that rather plain Jane LCD cluster might just leave you feeling a bit shortchanged. In this day and age, we expect a bit more flair, don't we? In fact, when it comes to features, the Raider just smashes it out of the park. In its standard trim, it gets a standard LCD cluster that looks better than the Xtreme, also is easier to read. But the real showstopper is this top-end version with that TFT display. It's got a swanky 5-inch TFT display brimming with tech wizardry. It's got everything: telephony, navigation, a bit of cheeky messaging when you're at standstill, and even the ability to stash your vehicle's documents in a digital format. A true testament to its connected technology prowess. Even 2 years post-launch, competitors are still scrambling to match these offerings. And the goodies don't stop there. The Raider comes equipped with a USB charging port essential for our gadget-filled lives, and not one but 2 riding modes, which we'll talk about in a bit. In contrast to the Raider, the most notable feature maybe on the Xtreme is the presence of a kill switch, which by the way does come in handy. And you also get this really tastefully designed sari guard, which is a bit of a shame though, because with the high seating that it has, it's not exactly the best place to perch for your sari-clad companion. Now let's gab about the ergonomics. The Raider is like your favorite armchair, roomy and welcoming with a seat height of 780mm that's easy to get along with. The Xtreme, on the other hand, has you perched high up, feeling like you're commanding the road. But it's the Raider that feels like a bespoke fit. It's like slipping into a well-tailored suit, comfortable and just right. It keeps its cool with a relaxed stance, typical of a commuter bike, while the Xtreme looks ready to pounce, even when you're just cruising. In terms of overtaking, both the bikes do it with breeze, just that this one has a slight bit of edge. You will have a cheeky grin when going past that slow-moving traffic. The Raider flexes its muscle with only a smidge more torque than the Xtreme. But when it comes to in-gear acceleration, the Raider gallops ahead, both in the urban jungle and on the open road. And a quirky tidbit from our tests, the Xtreme is a bit more generous with its speedo error compared to the Raider. In the city and out on the highway, the Raider's engine is like a chilled-out cat lounging in the sun, totally relaxed. The Xtreme, in contrast, feels like it's had one too many espressos. Beyond the 90km/h mark, the engine gets quite buzzy, quite throaty, as if it's auditioning for a garage rock band. It's begging for that 6th gear to smooth things out. The high-strung character of the Xtreme's engine also dips into its fuel economy. On the highway, it barely skimmed the 50km/L mark in our tests. The Raider, meanwhile, struts its stuff close to 60km/L. The city streets tell the same tale. The eco mode on that motorcycle is the real penny pincher. It definitely comes in handy if you are gunning for good fuel economy. And then you have the start-stop tech, which is the icing on the cake. Now, ironically, the top-end version of the Xtreme does not get Hero's acclaimed i3S start-stop tech. However, the more modest, non-ABS version gets it. Go figure. Speaking of ABS, its absence is a real bugbear in the Raider's otherwise shiny armor. TVS has a knack of sprucing up its RTR line almost annually. So I was all ears. I was hoping they would sprinkle some of that magic potion even on the Raider. Maybe introduce an ABS variant, but clearly they haven't. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still leaning on that combined braking system and it works quite well. It also keeps that nosedive in check compared to the Xtreme. But then in today's day and age where you have concrete roads that are expanding faster than a rabbit's colony, the safety net of an ABS is more than just a nice to have. The Xtreme, meanwhile, drops into the safety dance with more options. You got the standard model flaunting combined braking, or you can step up to the range-topping version you see here with single-channel ABS. The latter also boasts sharper braking and shorter stops than the Raider. The brake levers on the Xtreme lack the smooth, progressive feel you get with the Raider, making it a bit like a grabby handshake, effective, not as refined. The Raider looks a bit underdressed with these really slim 30mm forks, but surprise, when it comes to actual ride quality out of the box, I think it's really good. It does a really good job. It's a smooth operator at smoothing out those road imperfections, pesky bumps, etc. So if I were to ride on the typical Indian roads, this would be my choice over the Xtreme, which has a bit of that firm edge. Now, the Xtreme suspension isn't exactly like riding a jumpy baboon. It lacks the same level of finesse. However, it shows off its stuff in the handling. When you hit the twisty bits of the tarmac, the Xtreme feels steadier and more in tune with the road than the Raider. Thanks to its beefier forks, the front end is surprisingly sprightlier. And with those chunkier tires, it's like having an extra dose of courage when you're carving up those corners, leaning more towards the apex. Both bikes hold their own on the highway, boasting solid stability regardless of their different shoe sizes. Darting through lanes at speed is as unnerving as a walk in the park. When it comes to braking at highway speed, there is a bit of that nosedive, but it definitely feels a lot more confident whether it's tarmac or concrete roads. A tip of the hat for that ABS. Value-wise, when ABS is off the table, the base models of the Raider and the Xtreme 125 are squaring off pretty closely in terms of the price. But the Raider edges ahead in the value stakes. It packs a snazzier LCD cluster, a handy USB port, nifty under-seat storage and better fuel economy. So if I were to place my bets, the trophy would go to the Raider as far as the base model showdown goes. But if you're eyeing the top-tier variants, then things are going to be a bit different in my books. You see, the Raider justifies its 4,000 rupee premium with that posh TFT and connected tech. However, if I was spending my money, I would rather go with the Xtreme 125R ABS because the safer braking in my books is much better than some fancy hardware. So if you are willing to stretch that budget, I would lean with the Hero. As we tally up the scores, it's a photo finish, with the Raider winning by just a whisker. By 1 point to be exact. So if I were to sum it up, if you are looking for a nice, comfortable commuter and if fuel efficiency is a big criteria for you, then the Raider should keep you happy. But if your heart yearns for something that is sporty, something that is a bit more characterful, in that case, I think the Hero Xtreme 125R could be your motorcycle. What's your take? Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.